Many entrepreneurs have an eidetic ability to see a way forward in real time. It's an instinct developed through consistency, focus, and determination, 24/7, 365 days a year, or 8,760 hours, year over year. 8760 seeks to shed light on how leaders build businesses and brands, and clarity of the future is defined solely by a cipher of their minds.
Today's guest is Pete Tucci, founder and CEO of Tucci Limited, baseball's next evolution in batter's equipment and protective gear. Welcome, Pete. Today's our first 8760 podcast, so we're honored to have you as our guest.
I appreciate it. I'm honored to be here.
So we were just talking a little bit about it, but let's talk about it again. The World Series, playoffs. Is it you got a horse in the race? What's going on?
A horse in the race, yeah. Tommy Pham with the Diamondbacks. So actually went to Phillies game earlier in the series, and crowd there's like just electric. So, but as enticing as it was to root for the Phillies, I kind of had a pull for our dog. So he's in a World Series. So it's exciting to at least, kind of be in the mix, like as you kind of start the season and all the way through to the last game. So nice to know that we'll be there.
Are you going to the World Series?
I probably won't go. No.
Could you have?
Yeah, I'm sure I could have. But,
awesome.
Could have swung.
Yeah, if it was like the Blue Jays or like one of our bigger teams, where we had multiple guys, I'd probably be there. But yeah, I probably won't make it.
Do you have a true horse, or have you kind of gone just as a generalized fan now that you have so many relationships across the MLB?
So I grew up a Yankee fan. Mm-hmm. Still consider myself a Yankee fan, but this business has kind of messed with, I should say, the fan in me, because
blurs the lines a little bit.
Yeah, so it's kind of tough, right? So I grew up hating the Red Sox, and to this day, one of the best organizations that we deal with from a business standpoint. So love the people there I work with, and kind of tough to root against them now, so I find myself kind of pulling for them, and especially like if a team is playing against the Yankees and we got more guys in the lineup on that team, it's really hard to root against them. So it's kind of blurred the lines a lot, but I just like to think myself as more of a baseball fan now than a typical Yankee fan. But at the end of the day, I still consider myself a Yankee fan.
Something you mentioned, sort of you appreciate them as a business, and they've been great to kind of work with. How has your perspective of the business changed? Obviously, yourself as a player, growing up with the sport and the system, and sort of from that perspective, and then now that you're dealing with organizations from a different place, how has that changed your view on the business of baseball? Maybe I don't know if it necessarily changed it. I kind of felt. As a player, I kind of felt that business aspect of it right away. So you kind of see that, and you're, my time in the minor leagues as a player, you kind of feel that on a daily basis. So you're constantly trying to play the business, but at the same time, there's a certain humanity aspect to it, right? And a personalization to it with teammates and that kind of stuff. And now on this side of the business, being like product driven, but there's still a humanity aspect to it where, build the relationships with certain clubhouse managers and, certain people in the organization, players themselves and that kind of stuff. So, and then even from like competitors, right? Other bat companies, and I have great relationships with most of the bat companies out there. So there's that same kind of aspect where, when you're a minor league player and everybody's got that one goal trying to get to the big leagues, and it's between you and somebody else getting moved up to the next level. But at the same time, you're still pulling for that guy, right? There's that human aspect to it again that like you can't, it's really hard to sit and root against somebody who you're in a fight with every day on the same side, even though on paper, you're competing against that guy, right? And he's got a locker right next to you. So it's very similar like into what I'm doing now. So I don't think my opinion's really changed on that. Maybe you're not rooting for your competitors as much as you were when you were playing.
Yeah, probably. You're probably right about that. Yeah. So, there's always still that friendly rivalry, between, companies and that kind of stuff. But I think my life as a player has prepared me a lot for how to approach this business.
This is what you say. I don't even know if you know this, but the About section in your LinkedIn profile says, through my career of playing professional baseball, I've learned firsthand what players look for in a bat. and what they expect out of a bat company, right? So I think that speaks to the humanity part that you're just talking about, which is like, these are guys who are just trying to do a job and do it well.
Yeah.
I want to make sure they have great equipment. I know what it means. I know what it takes. Yeah.
So it's not even on the, say the physical equipment side all the time. It's what service can you provide them to, right? So it's not only how well the bat can we make, it's how can I help you in your career, right? How can I take what I've been through as a player and now combine that with the experience I've had as a bat manufacturer to help make you a better player and help you further along in your career and get the most out of it, right? And so whether that's suggestions on changing bat models, and listen, I didn't know, a tenth of what I know now, or, as far as the bats, right? I knew what I liked as a player, but there's a manufacturing aspect to it of what makes a better bat, what makes it more durable. So many different ways to change a balance point in a bat without even changing the profile, right? Changing the profile is one way to do it, but and so many of these guys are so accustomed to like that drop three, like when you're coming from college or from high school and you're, that is so ingrained in their head that, we talk to guys who've been in the big leagues for 8, 9, 10 years and they're like, oh, no, I have to swing a drop three. But it really makes no difference based on where that weight in the bat could be, right? And so trying to kind of educate these guys a little bit on the manufacturing side to help them maybe choose a better bat for them and fit them out better.
I love your video with Bo Bichette. And it's like, well, my dad said to swing this one, right?
So it's right. And you get that a lot, right? It's like you get handed a bat one day, like, Derek Jeter, right? Always talks about, who's notorious for swinging a P72, which is a Louisville model that's been on the market for 40 years. And it was his first day. He was, showed up to minor leagues after he signed his contract, and it was the first bat he picked up and literally used that bat to get into the Hall of Fame. Never changed once, like never even tried anything else. So some guys, hey, if it works, don't change. Like I wouldn't either. But at the same time, there's so many different variations that we can make.
Right. Well, I think that was interesting about the conversation with him too. It's just like, how you tweak the bat to be perfect and specific for his swing. That was pretty cool.
Yeah. So, and there's, now with all the data metrics and all that kind of stuff, that's been from the start of my business. When I first got into it back in 2010 is when I started, but really 2012 is when I kind of went into it as a full-time occupation. From that point until now, like the introduction of like the data metrics and then how, guys are, originally started how guys using it for their swing, but now it's like, how can we extrapolate that data to then help fit a guy's swing better so you don't have to think so much about your swing, right? If there's a correction you make in bat path, there's a way we might be able to do that on our end where, hey, you just get up there and swing, take your natural swing, and we can manipulate the bat to kind of get you on plane more, right? And so now it's a lot more than just, think about 30, 40 years ago, Louisville Slugger, putting a piece of wood on a lathe, turning it and dipping it in polyurethane and sending it out the door, right? There's so much more that goes into it now.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And is that something that you're seeing sort of as generations are more accustomed to the prevalence of metrics and data that they're asking more proactively about? Or is it still something that, you're educating sort of what you can do?
I think we're educating what we can do because in all honesty, I don't even think the players think about that end of it. I still think they think about the data more so on their physical side, right? What they need to change about their swing, how can they change what they're doing to get their metrics better. So
was that something that
this is something we're trying to introduce more on, like, okay, we can use this data so you don't have to think so much. And
were you more accustomed or more in tune with equipment or performance when you were playing?
When I played, yeah. I would have been all over this stuff back when I played. And guys are still, there's still guys who kind of have their heels dug in on it, right?
Yeah.
And kind of like the old traditional way of, I would have been all over this as a player. If you could tell me exactly what I'm doing and I could look at it and then put that up against the best in the game and see, all right, let me see the sequence, like when their hands go, when their hips fire to when their shoulder fires to when their hands fire to when the barrel is actually released. I would have been all over that.
Some
right?
of the science behind
some of the guys still don't like doing it. And on our end now, it's about knowing that player, like knowing the guy and who you can go down that road with and who, will just kind of keep it a little bit more vanilla with,
Where do you think that your personal interest in, more of the data and, sort of the performance aspect of it is rooted from?
I just think my overall seeking of like the perfect swing or the, whether, and I don't believe, and we talked about this before we came on the air here, but I don't believe there's a perfect swing for, like across the board. I think there are some aspects of the swing that kind of you have to hit, and bat path to me being the main one. But I think it's different for each player. But within that player, how could I maximize what I'm doing, right? And that's, as a player, that's all I was ever trying to do. I wanted to leave no stone unturned, and I was going to do everything I could as a player to be successful. Did that happen for me? No. I ended up, ultimately failing at what I tried to do. And it's funny. I think there was another, I don't know if it was on another podcast I was on or it was another interview. It's funny because I wake up every day kind of accepting the fact that I'm a failure, right? I failed at what I set out to do in my life for a period of time between probably, I'd say realistically, when I was 10, that's what I knew, like I want to be a professional baseball player. And kind of that dream seemed like it was going to become a reality, and first round draft pick and, organizational player of the year in the minor leagues and finishing top 3 in voting and minor league player of the year. And all of a sudden get an injury, things kind of change. Now all of a sudden swing patterns change, and now I can't put my finger on what's going on. Bang around for another 3 years, and all of a sudden I'm out of the game now, right? And so I feel like what I set out to do, I ultimately failed on, right? I didn't accomplish my goal. I know.
I mean, a lot of people, there's elements outside of your control, right? But the personalization, right? The accountability of it seems to be part of what drives you and what you are doing now, is that this new chapter, there seems to be a fire lit because of your perspective on your earlier chapter.
Yeah. And I do think, maybe there, in some kind of destined way, maybe that was the way it was supposed to, that's the way my book was supposed to be written, right? And it was to lead me into what I'm doing now, and whether that's helping other people to, achieve their dreams, or, but just trying to take what I've been through and apply that to what I'm doing now, and hopefully create a better product. And
I think that's part of, what we've wanted to get to with this podcast, right? Is that we know that often people talk about, what's your why, and, why do people do things? Why do people start businesses? What's, really kind of driving them? We believe that that's certainly an important aspect of what gets you up and fired up, to go on the field or to, sit down in the boardroom, right? But part of it, we believe true success comes from the will to actually see it through, right? And the 8760 name is really, it's the number of hours in a year, and it's the understanding that when there's passion, when there's focus, when there's a vision, it's longer than, our weeks or our days, and it's years upon years of hard work. And it feels like there was a personal ambition to compete, and there was a drive, but everything that you've sort of said beyond that is you wanted to have a bigger impact, and your impact through education, performance improvements, and technology is having a bigger impact on the sport, arguably, than potentially the individual legacy that we all kind of crave, right? In a certain extent.
Yeah, I see that. I hope that's the case when everything's all said and done. I hope I'm able to leave a legacy bigger than what I ever could have done as a player. And now that's the new goal.
Pete, we spent that. I think it helped you down in spring training that year.
Yeah.
Hold the clipboard and write down numbers, right? That was fun. That was the best time I ever had. But I saw the relationship that you had with players just because they knew you. They recognized you. Like, oh, Pete, hey, listen, I think if you didn't have that experience, probably wouldn't happen, right? You couldn't have just been some guy that decided to make bats in his garage and then just be like, hey, you want to buy one?
Most companies, are.
Right.
Most companies are in that boat. There's not a lot of companies that were ex-players and had that experience and can kind of speak on the same experiences that, what these guys are currently going through. So,
and they knew your name, right? And now, hey, listen, it's the name on the bat now,
Yeah.
right? That says something for sure.
yeah, well, I appreciate it.
Yeah. Listen, I'm gonna take you back to that for a second. I remember that. Do you remember this? This is
My God, I haven't seen one of these in so long.
so that is an original. That was, I remember pulling it out of the back of your minivan that day, and the look on your face was like, "Oh, that's money you're pulling out of my van." And they're like, "Hey, Hojo, could you sign one of these for me?" And he's like, "Sure, no problem." You're like, "Oh my God, that's $200 right now."
So, that original logo, I don't even have any more of those decals left. So
Right.
it's funny.
Oh,
Like
there
I
we
haven't
go.
seen
This one's worth
I haven't
money then.
seen one in a long time where, so for people who don't know, where it says Tucci Lumber Company, that was only on there for like literally a couple months. And we kind of got a little slap on the wrist for it. So when we got first MLB approved, this was the logo we hit the market with. And once we started seeing the spring training games on TV and as the season started, we weren't maximizing our space that we're allowed to take up on the bat. So against the rules of Major League Baseball, we changed, we kept the same logo, but we got rid of the Tucci Lumber Company going through it, dropped that to the bottom and shrunk it and made the TL much bigger. So it was much more prominent on TV. And we did kind of get a little slap on the wrist at the time, but we felt it was important to push the envelope and ultimately worked out in our favor. But yeah, so that was like a small snippet in time. I want to say it was like about a 2-month period that we used those decals on that logo. So
This is a classic then. I
and
didn't
what's
even know.
funny about that is I still deal with Hojo today. Well, I was just down with him. Him and his son have an academy in Nashville, Tennessee, and they have about 17 teams out of there, and just kind of rebrand. Now that Hojo got inducted to the Mets Hall of Fame this year, rebranded it all under the Hojo name, and so we just inked a deal with those guys, and so now they're all Tucci with our new bats, new helmets, obviously the wood bats. So it's kind of pretty cool too. And met Hojo. He was a roving hitting instructor at the time when I was kind of on the down turn of my career and ended up with the Mets. And he was our roving hitting instructor when I was there. So that's where we first met. And then funny how kind of things come full circle.
Isn't it funny?
Yeah.
But that's actually, it's funny. I remember that the moment you got your first order. Do you remember that?
Gabby Sanchez.
Gabby Sanchez, right? And so I remember thinking like, all right, he's got his first order. Like, what's this going to be like? And in the club, he writes on the corner of a piece of paper and rips it off the pad and hands it to you and said, "Here you go."
So I don't know if you remember that, but before that, we actually, one of the players, Logan Morrison, ordered bats. So he was like, I love this bat. Feels great. Can I get 12? So, okay. So he went in, talked to the clubby with the Marlins at the time. Clubby comes out, and he was a great guy. To this day, I love the guy, and he's great to work with. But he was one of those original guys that were like, "I've never heard of you. Like, who do you think you are? I've been doing this for 40 years, and, I don't think he was too keen on all like that, the popularity of all these new bat companies kind of popping up. But so he comes storming out of the clubhouse. He said, "I don't know who you think you are, but these guys are not ordering bats, just because you give them one sample. You got to send him his custom model and this and that." I said, "Okay, no problem. I'll send it to him." And then 20 minutes later, he comes out with an order for Gabby Sanchez, but he never placed the order for Logan Morrison at that time, which was pretty funny. But we ended up getting him later in the year, which was good. But
Oh, I remember the price negotiation going on then too. It's like, oh God.
yeah, you think I would have been a little bit more prepared as I looked back. I mean, I was shooting from the hip at the time, and he was like, "How much are they?" And I had no idea what to tell him. I knew what our retail price was, but I hadn't even come up with an MLB kind of price structure. So I was kind of like feeling them out to see like where we were on the market and kind of settled on a price at the time, and it all ended up working out. But yeah, there's a lot of shooting it from the hip. In those days, in all honesty, I probably would never have even gotten into the business had I wouldn't been shooting from
Fast
the hip.
forward to now, and just tough.
It was. I think being a little green behind the ears, so to speak, helped me out in a way that if I knew how tough things would have got, and the hurdles I would have to overcome, and I would have looked to go into something else at that time. You know what I mean? So, but it all kind of worked out, and like I said, I think kind of just not knowing and just going for broke with passion, kind of all worked out in the end.
So in that time when you realized sort of the injury was going to prevent you from achieving the dream that you had set out, I know you were kind of came back and you were working with your brother-in-law at the time, right? When that was a part of your life, were you still gravitated back to trying to figure out how you were going to get back to baseball, or did you really pocket that?
Yeah, I kind of pocketed it. In all honesty, there was about a 5-year period where I almost stayed clear of baseball, like completely. I couldn't watch it on TV. I would almost get like sick to my stomach every year. February would roll around because it just felt like I'm not supposed to be here. I'm supposed to be in spring training right now, right? Like I'm not supposed to be here. And so I kind of got into this like real, like kind of almost depression for, 6 weeks, from February till the end of March. And then once the season would start, I'd kind of get over it. But I still wouldn't watch games on TV for the most part. It's just,
We were talking about that.
couldn't really do it. So the thought of getting back into it, it took a good 5 years to just get over the fact. Again, it was a lifelong dream that every decision I had made was geared towards how is this going to help me get to Major League Baseball.
Yeah.
And so it was like this bad breakup that
Yeah.
burned in pictures kind of a thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like you're just trying to erase that memory, and ultimately couldn't. And my wife was the one who finally came to me and said, "You've kind of you've changed. Your passion for life has changed since you gotten out of baseball, and kind of did distance myself, not necessarily from her, but just in life, just kind of didn't have the same passion. Didn't really feel I was doing what I was meant to do. And even though I loved every day I worked with my brother-in-law, we had a blast doing it. And it was really cool because it was something different, right? I'd never worked with my hands before other than playing baseball, right? I was that kid who's, my dad was the coach and was like, don't go swimming a half hour before a game. Don't, don't go skiing because you might get hurt. Like everything was to, prevent a possible injury so I never worked a saw in my life, never, any of that kind of stuff. It just never happened. So when I went to work with my brother-in-law, it really was the first opportunity to start working with my hands and, we're installing boilers and, kind of owning and operating this heating and air conditioning company. And for the first time in my life, like I said, it gave me an opportunity to work with my hands. And had it not been for that period in my life, never would have been able to kind of take what I knew from baseball and actually physically make a bat. So a lot of what I learned with him, and in those, we did that for 7 years. In that time period, really applied a lot of what I know now to kind of getting the bat business up, off the ground, right? So piping and all that stuff. On any given day, if I'm in the shop and a machine breaks down, I'm typically the one that troubleshoots it and can kind of break everything down and rebuild it back up. And that all came from him and learning how to troubleshoot, a motor or anything like that. So a lot of the knowledge I picked up from him, it's kind of weird how my life turned out, but I kind of needed both to happen, right? I needed the baseball part of my life to happen. And then I needed that kind of blue collar in a basement, spending, 14 hours, getting somebody's heat back on because their boiler cracked, right? And now kind of applying all that to kind of what ultimately helped me start this business.
That was something that, we were wondering, right, is how that transition happened from finely tuned athlete to looking at a piece of lumber and saying, I could.
He's still a funny tuned athlete.
No, right. Yes. Because they feel quite different, right? And
Yeah, it's a lot different.
The traditional path that you expect. You see a lot of athletes that are their way to stay close to the game is to coach or to commentate or things like that.
So when my wife first came to me with, this kind of idea of you need to find a way back into baseball because you've kind of lost something in your life and you're a different man than the man I married. Her first thought was, you ever thought about coaching? You ever thought about doing lessons? But, again, we were married, we had kids at this point, and my idea was, a lot of those lessons don't start until the kids are out of school and they go until 10, 11 o'clock at night. And my kids were young and I wanted to watch them grow up. I wanted to be with them. I didn't want to spend, as much as I love hitting and talking about hitting and teaching hitting, didn't necessarily want that for my life to kind of my work day start at 3 p.m. and go until 10, 11 o'clock at night. And, by the time I get home, my kids are in bed, and then, I'm home all day and they're in school, right? So I couldn't really see myself doing that. And at that time, we were still, owning and, operating this business. It wasn't, something that I felt I could do both at the time, right? Like I was physically in someone's basement or in their attic getting their heating and air conditioning back on. So it's kind of tough. And so that's when she said, have you ever thought about making bats? Because you're the pickiest. I can't say what she said. She said you were just really picky about it and were very opinionated. And my answer to her was, just because I was picky and opinionated about it doesn't mean I know how to do it.
Yeah, right.
Like I don't know the first thing about making a bat. And then she kind of went down this road. At the time, I didn't know, and started researching it. And she was the one who ended up buying the first lathe and contacted a wood mill. And about 2-3 weeks later, this, I get home from work and all these boxes in the driveway. And
happy birthday!
Listen, I think she spent about maybe $3,000 or $4,000 on a lathe and some wood. And she said, try it. Like maybe you'll like it. And it just as a way to get back into baseball. Yeah. And so it kind of, it was kind of nice, like that first 6 months, I'd say, because I would go to work all day, come home, and it's fun. That first night, I set it all up. Actually made one bat. It took me about 3 hours to make, and it actually resembled a bat. Like not, it didn't look like what like a typical like high school kid would make in like wood shop.
Yeah,
right?
Right,
so like I was able to take what was in my mind and actually produce something that like looked like something that I would have used as a professional player. So I was kind of impressed with myself at that time and showed it to a few people, and literally like the next day I had guys saying, how much, and again, kind of shoot from the hip. I said, I don't know, give me $75. And started making bats like that. Now at this time, this is before all CNC, before I had any CNC machinery, just all doing it by hand. And I think, again, like the steps that have kind of led all up to this, learning to do it by hand kind of really led. I think I needed that portion of it as well. I don't think I would have been able to do what I do had I just gone straight to CNC and kind of being able to do it, with different points and measurements and that kind of stuff, and learning the old traditional way of doing it kind of then lended again into once we got into like CNC machinery. But yeah, so it, kind of those nights of like sitting there and kind of going into my garage and kind of making these bats was like really therapeutic, right? It was, and I think ultimately is what got me out of the funk I was in from not making it in Major League Baseball, right? And that kind of, it's probably the best therapy I've ever had. And just being alone in my thoughts and wood and creating a bunch of sawdust kind of helped, and eventually got to a point where I said, all right, yeah, I think I want to do this, as a business. So I did set up an LLC at that point. But again, this was still only like a relatively small, like side business kind of hobby, and never was really intended, because we were having some success in the heating and air conditioning business. I just built a new house, and we were doing all right. And then my brother-in-law one Saturday, just 38 years old, and went to his bedroom and never came out, and had a heart attack, and kind of opened my eyes to a lot of things at that period in time that the old saying, life is too short, and it really is, right? It's too short to not do what you want to do. And kind of felt at that point, if I had to put all the chips on the table on one thing, it was going to be in baseball and not in heating and air conditioning, right? That was kind of his baby, and I was along for the ride, and he taught me a lot. And again, I mean, we had a blast doing it just because we would laugh our asses off every day we went to work. But then, now it was like, all right, where do I see myself being successful? And that's where, again, if I had to kind of bet on myself in any area, that's where I'd bet on myself.
So maybe that's the answer, right? But going into that transition, what was the thing, or what were the things that you sort of relied on, say, this is going to be it, right? I'm going to put all all of the chips in and I'm going to go for it?
My wife's support, probably, like, number one, right? Like, it's so from the second I told her this is what I want to do, she was just like, okay, didn't bat an eye. And I put her in some very precarious situations financially just over the years of, again, we had this solid foundation of, okay, we're making money, we're doing okay, we're paying the bills, we have a nice house. And then, like, hey, we sold it. Like, yeah, we had a little bit of money now at that point, but there's a couple, when I look back, there's some regrets I have on how I did things. But again, I just kind of shot from the hip again and took all that money and put it all into the bat business. So I felt good about myself because I owned everything outright. I didn't have any loans on anything, but at the same time, had no cash coming in. We were very limited in cash now in the bank. So there were some lean years there where we're just scraping by to make our mortgage, and it was tough, and she stuck by me, like, the whole time. So I think without her support from the get-go, it never would have gotten off the ground.
When you kind of go back to playing days and prep and, how you would get mentally prepared and focused, and I think you said even, from the time you were 10 years old, you're like, I'm going to be a professional baseball player. That laser sort of focus, did that play a role in how you were able to start to focus from
I think
this
so.
new venture?
Yeah, because I think once I kind of flipped that switch in my brain, then it was that laser focus on, okay, I'm going to make this happen, right? Like, I'm not going to leave failure up to chance this time, right? And so, kind of say, what, like, either way, like, somehow or another, I'm going to make this work. And now, looking back, we kind of we did things differently than most companies. Most companies kind of create this, like, local groundswell and do pretty good and expand, and they may be in business for 5, 6, 7 years before they even attempt, if ever, to go to Major League Baseball. We had literally made bats for, I don't know, 50 little leaguers in Norwalk. And showed up at, the Yankees' doorstep in spring training, like, after getting our MLB approval. So, it was just, like, right out of the gate, like, I'm going to sink or swim, and we're going to find out right away if what I think is a major league quality product actually is.
What made you go right there?
A couple things. My initial thought was I still had contacts in Major League Baseball, so it was like, all right. And that's why it was important to put my name on the bat, because if they saw it and, like, hey, I played it with a guy, Tucci, and I wonder if it's the same guy. Looking back, that kind of wasn't the best thing. So I had a couple of close friends, one of which, if he sees this, probably gonna laugh at it. But so John McDonald was my college roommate at Providence College, and drafted by the Indians and went on to a 16-year career in the big leagues. So he's kind of towards, let's say, towards the end of his career at this point.
At that point.
So this is right before we got MLB approved. And I ran into him at a trade show that we were at Mohegan Sun. And he's like, Tucci, oh my God, what are you doing? Like, this is great. I didn't know you were doing this. So, well, I've been meaning to kind of reach out to you. I'd love to send you some bats and see what you think. And he's like, yeah, all right, yeah, I would love to try them. I said, what model do you use? He's like, I really don't remember. Like, all right, that's odd. I could tell you every bat I think I've ever used since the time I was in Little League, but kind of odd that a major league player can't remember what model he uses. I said, well, what size? He's like, I really don't remember. And I'm like, all right, something's up here. So I really didn't press the issue. A few days later, we had a mutual friend who he had from high school, and now I have met afterwards, now, like, kind of being back in the baseball world and making bats, and kind of ran into a guy who owned a sports store up in, like, East Lyme, Connecticut. And he was like, what's up with your boy Mac? I said, what do you mean? He's like, yeah, he said, he told me you're making bats. Like, yeah, I saw it. We had talked about it. Are you going to use them this year? And he's like, I'm afraid to try them. What if I don't like them? How am I going to tell him that? And I kind of appreciated that. Like, I could see that. Other people I told the story to was like, I can't believe he would do that. But I can. As an ex-player, I could see where he would, that kind of puts him, like, in the middle of this, here's my real good friend. He's making a product. it could really hinder
Yeah, right.
my livelihood, right? So I kind of made a point at that, now the ball was already in motion. We were already kind of MLB approved or in the process of getting MLB approved at that time. So, but I kind of pivoted and said, I'm not going to go to anybody I know. I'm not going to go to anyone I know as a personal friend or even as knew me as a player. I made it a point to go to guys who didn't know me as anything other than this new bat company on the market. Mm-hmm. So, and we've ended up finding success with that. We ended up year one, we had 55 guys in the big leagues, and 5 of which were in the World Series that year, and 2 of those bats ended up in the Hall of Fame in year one. This was year one in the big league. So like we hit the ground running with like MLB. And then the next year, Johnny Mac started using our bats, and my buddy Mark DeRosa started using our bats. And it was funny when I didn't approach DeRosa at all in 2012, and then 2013, he was like, why didn't you come see me last year? I said, you know what, you wouldn't have used them last year. It would have been funny. There had to be some credibility behind it before going to guys I know and that kind of stuff. So, but that was ultimately my original reason for going that route was, I had some context there. The other was, because we did get some pushback from some MLB clubbies at the time that were saying, listen, why don't you go peddle your bats on minor leaguers? Like, why are you trying to, get major league guys right out of the gate? And I knew this firsthand. Minor league guys don't want to use what major league guys aren't using, and major league guys are more confident in themselves to say, I like this product or I don't like this product. Minor league guy can take that product and hit, 5 balls out in BP. Mm-hmm. But if they don't see guys on TV using it, it's like it's a hard sell. Where a major league guy, you can sit there and say, you know what, I like this product. They have more confidence in themselves. So knowing that was a big reason for me to kind of go the other, like I didn't approach any minor leaguers. Like we're all MLB year one. Yeah. And then we started kind of branching out and getting minor leaguers and that kind of stuff. But so those 2 reasons were like the biggest reasons why we kind of started
there. We were talking about this earlier too. Baseball players are a little superstitious sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. So we deal with that every day.
Right. They've got 3 brands in their bag because of what, whatever they're on a streak. So they keep using the bat, and then they're like, I can't hit this week, so I got to switch bats. Right.
So I'll give you another story. Yeah. So year one, Mark Teixeira had signed with the Yankees and I think was living in Greenwich and was working out of Bobby Valentine's batting cage in Stanford. So a buddy of mine worked there. It was like, hey, Teixeira comes in every day. He's hitting. He leaves his bats here. Do you want to come here? I said, say no more. I said, let me know when he leaves. So Tex left his bats in my buddy's office. So I drove down there, took a bunch of measurements, stuff off his bats, or, went back, made 2 bats for him, and went, and the next day went and just left them next to his bats. So my buddy calls me. He's like, hey, Tex is using the bats right now. So it's all right. He calls me afterwards. He said he loves them, wants to meet you. I said, all right. So the next day I drove down there, met with Tex, and just kind of picking his brain, what he thought. And he's like, they feel great. Go to spring training. So now, again, being a Yankee fan, went to the Yankees first. I'm like, one, it's the closest team to my house. So, and 2, just being a huge fan all these years. So but talking to people who are like, don't even bother with the Yankees. Like Fort Knox there, they're not going to let you in. Like you're a new bat company. Like don't even bother.
I got the golden ticket. But, right?
I was just like, I didn't listen to a lot back then. So I went down a week early to spring training, and just made my rounds around, down around Florida to all the different sites just to meet the clubhouse manager. This is before most of the players even reported. And that helped out a lot. So I kind of went to the Yankees first and met their clubhouse manager, Rob Kukuza, and we talked and kind of verified that I was on the MLB approved list. And he said, I'll tell you what, he said, players report next Monday. You can be day one. He's like, come in Monday and the floor is yours. All the guys getting ready, bring, your bats, show them the guys. It's all right. So the remainder of that week, I kind of went all different sites, went back to Tampa that Monday, and I show up there, and I just brought like 2 huge duffel bags. I probably had 150 bats in like these 2 bags with me, and literally just dragged them to the middle of the floor in Yankees clubhouse, and happened to be right in front of Nick Swisher's locker. But when I walked in, Rob, their club, he says, dude, who are you? I said, what do you mean? I met you last week. He's like, I know, I never heard of you before last week. I got 7 guys asking for your bats right now. He's like, how did you do that? I said, I really don't know. I said, other than Tex, he's the only one here. So it was Tex was telling all these, like, you got to try these bats. They're really hard. Like, they feel great. So I kind of walked into the Yankees, like Swisher was like on us like right away, and we started making him bats. And he ended up being like our first kind of big name guy that really kind of gave us a shot and using them on a daily basis. Tex never once ordered our bats. Wow. Never once, right? So it was like, yeah, he loved them. And so kind of talked to him a few times. And now it's like right before the All-Star break of that year. So we're almost halfway through the year and saw him in the Yankee clubhouse. I'm like, Tex, not for nothing. Like, you tell me you love the bats. He's like, I do. I use them every day in BP. I said, all right, I'm not interested in making your BP bat.
Yeah.
Like, well, how can we make your game bat? He's like, all right, I'll tell you what. It's a different model than what you replicated for me. Here's my game bat. If I like it, I'll use it. I said, all right. So take it back to my shop, replicate it, bring 2 back to him. And he goes, remember, if I like it, I'll use it in the game. I said, all right. So I go, drive back home,
tuning in,
watching on TV. Sure enough, his first at bat, he's using our bat. I said, all right, he must have liked it. First pitch, slider in the dirt. He's like, ass out, like in front swing, lets go of the bat, flies into the stand. And Spike Lee catches it. So we're like at least trending on number 1 for Yahoo for the day because Spike Lee ended up catching our bat. And like, it was a great shot of him. But Tex never picked us up again after that. So we had like that one shot, that one swing didn't work. And like to your point, like you were up against superstition all the time, right? Mm-hmm. Sometimes it works in our favor, sometimes it doesn't. So just the nature of the business.
You said something before just about the hardness of the bat, right? I know that was a big selling point too when we were down in spring training that year too. So talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so again, as a player, when I played, I would take all the bats I ordered, and this was, early on in my minor league career, I wasn't able to order, custom bats. It was just whatever they had in the stock room. Mm-hmm. So I'd take my, 6 bats and bring them back to my apartment, sand all the finish down, and then went to a butcher, got a femur bone from a cow, boiled all the meat off it, and would sit there and rub the bats and try to compress the wood. Now, and I did that to every bat I've ever used, and then I started ordering my bats unfinished so I wouldn't have to spend the time sanding them down, but kind of did this throughout my career and can totally feel a difference. But like before, it's at that,
rehardened.
It's called boned, right? So it's just a term everybody uses in baseball is boned. Before and after. So now making it on my own, and I always said I wish there was a company to like that would just do this for you instead of me having to sand them down and do this. And so when I started, making them and I got the lathe set up, it was really important for me to kind of make these bats, pre-hardened. Like how am I going to compress this wood and make it harder? So did the same thing. Went to the butcher, got a bone, boiled the meat off it, and when we tried to kind of apply that pressure now under the RPMs of adding a machine, it was just too much friction. The bone would like burn, so it didn't really work and do what I wanted to do. And so I always had a gym at my house, and so kind of went down to my gym and I had a lat pull down bar and grabbed that and was able to put a lot more pressure on it and kind of coined the phrase steel burnished, right? So now we say our bats are steel burnished, which now we're taking this steel and compressing it beyond anything I was able to do before the machinery. And that kind of became like our calling card, right? That was like what made us different and what made us stand out.
Was that something that all players did? Or
it was kind of common. I wouldn't say all players did it, but it was kind of common practice. Guys would do it on a sink, right? They'd take the bats in the bathroom, in the locker room and try to, on the porcelain of the sink and try to compress it. They weren't sanding them down like I was doing it. And like without sanding it, you're really not doing anything in all honesty. But
I remember some guys too. That's like they'll swing it in the cage for 4 or 5 days just to harden it, just to try.
Take as much of that dent. Get rid of all that denting that's going to happen. Yeah. And like for us, that's like the biggest thing we're trying to eliminate, right? Can we eliminate those seam marks that are embedded in the bat upon contact? Because that's just energy being absorbed into the bat, right? We want that to be as hard as possible to kind of return all that energy back into the ball.
Yeah. Why do you think another company that's a big supplying bats, right? So why don't you think that was something that they picked up on? Was it because their leadership wasn't ingrained in the sport?
There was one company when Marucci first started. They were like the first ones to kind of hit the market. But this is after I got out of playing, where they were like the first bone rubbed bat, and so there was a company starting to do it, but again, they weren't doing it under like the pressure of like the machine, like, under the RPM. So they were doing it much in the same way we as players were doing it. As far as I know, we were the first ones to kind of add steel to it and call it steel burnished, and other companies that follow suit now. We were going to try to do a patent on it at the time, process patent, but talking to different process attorneys, and it's so easily to circumvent that you're just kind of throwing money down the drain. And that those days was money we didn't have. So it really didn't make sense to kind of go down that road. It kind of made more sense to kind of brand ourselves as the original steel press or steel burnished back company.
Yeah, own the process, and you're known for it.
Yeah.
So
Pete, we from wood bats to protective equipment. That's big jump, right?
So now with our kind of things happen over the last few years, and kind of partnered with Shut Sports and who's on the football side, and now our parent company is Surtor Sports, and so they own two football brands, Shut and Vices, and Tucci is the baseball brand under that umbrella. And we have a tremendous team now of engineers out in Seattle that, make the best protective equipment known to in any sports, right? Like, I think we have the top 5 rated football helmets on the market. And so kind of having that in my back pocket would be kind of foolish not to utilize it, right? Like, obviously there's a lot of protection needed in baseball, from batting helmets to batters' protective equipment, which is kind of boomed over the last 10 years. Like, you go to a tournament now, and there's not a kid around that does not wear an elbow guard or a shin guard. Yeah. So, but kind of being able to bring something fresh and new to that market, is kind of, I think, needed, right? There's a predominant player in that market space that kind of dominates it. And then there's a lot of knockoffs that kind of look almost exactly like it, right? And so how can we bring something fresh that, 1, performs better, 2, is a little bit lighter, and 3, is a lot more customizable, right? And so that's kind of what we brought to the table with the batter's protection. Our batting helmet is the lightest batting helmet on the market, right? So how can we shrink the profile? Baseball and football, they come obviously originally in the football world. Football is highly protective, right? How great can we protect the head of a football player, especially, after all the, kind of CTE issues, and concussions that were popping up, 10 years ago. And so you saw these numbers kind of decline in youth football. And so they've made unbelievable strides in that world. Mm-hmm. But baseball's different, right? There's not really a hitter worth his salt who thinks he's going to get hit in the head or even worries about it because he's not going to be able to be a very good hitter. So the biggest thing in baseball happened to be, how good do I look in the helmet and how well does it feel, right? Mm-hmm. And so those are like issues we had to address against other helmets on the market, right? A lot of the helmets are really big, especially on the younger players. It's just,
like bobbleheads when
exactly. And so how can we still be that ultra protective company and still give you the best protection, but in a really sleek package and really profiled look, and kind of give you more of that big league feel? If you notice, like, the helmets that players wear in Major League Baseball doesn't look like the same helmets that, minor leaguers wear, even though it's the same technically model. Once you add that double ear flap, and it just gives it a whole different look. But how can we still have that MLB kind of sleek profile look on a double ear flap helmet that's meant for the masses, in the amateur market? And so our engineers kind of were able to use some of the proprietary foams that they use in some of their football helmets and our batting helmets, and kind of lighten it. And so now we have this really cool looking, very sleek, light, highly protective batting helmet that I think we're going to do real well with.
Yeah.
So it's exciting now finally having, I think we were talking before, having something new to talk about, right? So as much as I love wood bats and I go back to those days in my garage when I was, those 2, 3 a.m., sitting there whittling wood bats down, what I ultimately wanted out of this whole thing. And it was never just to be a wood bat company. I always kind of saw this being a more baseball equipment brand, right? Yeah. And kind of, what we could bring to the table from all aspects and how we can help in that area. So starting to see that come to fruition is very exciting now.
Talk about how did you know that it was time, right? It's like, okay, I got the wood bat thing down, Major League Baseball, we've got the players using it. People know the brand a little bit more now. What were some of the things that like led to the jump? Where it's like, okay, how did you start to partner? Why did you create that relationship with on the other side with the now with the composite bats, the protective gear, all that?
Yeah, it was. It was. I kind of felt like around 2018 was around the time, right? We started getting. It's kind of like cult light following, right? We kind of became this like really niche brand that was really big in MLB, and we weren't like your Louisville Sluggers, right? We weren't in every sports store around the country, and we still aren't. You know what I mean? Like we're not like that in-your-face brand where everybody knows it. But if you're in the know, you're in the know, right? So if you're that elite kid and you're in the perfect game world and you know what MLB guys are swinging, you know who we are, right? And so we kind of became this like niche little like high-end baseball brand. And so 2018 we started, 17, 18 we started getting requests for when you guys, have you ever thought about coming out with BB Core, when you coming out with BB Core? And again, it was always something that I kind of had in my mind to eventually get into. Just from a business standpoint, it's the largest part of the market, right? Just to give you an example, wood bat profit margins are slim, right? It's a tough business to, you really got to keep things tight to make it profitable because there's a ceiling on what people are willing to pay. And even though we're at the top of that ceiling, like as far as our price points, because we put every ounce of what we can do into a bat to make it, as high, from using the best wood to the best finishes to the best processes.
Well, I remember the day you told me that just the piece of wood alone, it's like you need a whole warehouse full of them. You're like, yeah, those are like $60 a piece. And
yeah.
I'm like,
so the raw material is like really expensive. So that's what you're up against. You're up against this really expensive raw material, and what people are willing to pay for a product that probably is going to break at some point. If you're playing enough, and at a high enough competition, like as much as we want to make an unbreakable wood bat, I tell every dad who, is his bat going to break? I said, well, listen, I can guarantee you I'll make a bat your son will never break, but I can also guarantee you're probably not going to get a lot of hits with it because it's going to be way too heavy. Or, like it's a sliding scale of, it's what's going to play best for your kid and how durable it's going to be. So you're kind of up against that in the wood game. On the BB Core side and on the aluminum composite side, it's much more traditional as far as like, okay, we have a cost and this is what we could bring it in for and this is what we could retail it for. And that ceiling's obviously a lot higher because it's typically a product that lasts longer and there's a lot more technology goes into it. So, from a business
buyers of it too.
Yeah, and there's a lot more kids who obviously use alloy and composite bats, right? So from a business standpoint, it made sense to get into that market. Doesn't make sense for everybody because do you have a credible enough name to do it? And then what are you bringing new to the table, right? So that was another thing I didn't want. I don't want like an OEM product that we just kind of went to a factory overseas and said, what do you have that nobody's using? Slap our name on it and kind of run it out to the market and see what happens. So it was really important to have our own team of engineers to kind of be behind it and bring something new to the table. So for instance, 2 of our engineers came from Washington State University. They were actually the engineers that are administering the BB Core tests for a number of years out of Washington State University. So they have firsthand knowledge of what they were seeing, what was working well for companies, what wasn't, and kind of take a lot of that knowledge now and kind of apply it to what, we think is one of the, eventually going to be one of the leaders in the bat world. And, so this is, it kind of, it was important for me to have that. And it was important for me to not feel like we were kind of dipping our toes into those waters, right? We didn't want to be like companies like, well, let's try this and see what happens. And then if it didn't work, we'll pull it back off the market. No, like we jumped in with 2 feet and like we're all in. Like I said, we have an entire bat lab out in Seattle with a team of engineers that are working on this stuff every day. So we're here to stay. Like we're here to make a splash in this market and hopefully be a major player in this market in the next coming years.
Yeah, there's no doubt. How did you establish that relationship? Did you approach them or did they come to you?
They actually called me. So we kind of fit what they were looking for. They, at that time, Schutt had a baseball line on the market, and they really made a niche for themselves in the world of women's softball, and they're like a prominent helmet, especially down south in the women's fast pitch world. Outside of that, they weren't. They tried to introduce bats to the market, never really took off. They tried to introduce gloves to the market, all under the Schutt brand, but ultimately we're kind of viewed in the market as it's a football company trying to get into the baseball space. And they had credibility in the protection world because, where they come from in football. And so I think the market kind of conceded like, all right, we'll let you have it. Like, we understand you're have some credibility there. But when it comes to the other stuff, like, no, like we're not going to buy that. So they kind of had this issue that they kind of felt like he grew that side of the business as far as they could, and they really couldn't bring anything else to it under that brand. And so we kind of, we're doing what we were doing. We're predominantly, again, and most of our sales are going to Major League Baseball, where we had this upper echelon of the best players in the world swinging our bats. And we're kind of, again, creating this really niche kind of brand name among amateur players around the country who, again, were in the know, right? Like, they're big into baseball. And so they had gotten, a couple of guys who they, when they'd ask around who somebody needed to talk to, my name kept coming up. And so their CEO at the time called me and said, would you, be interested in kind of partnering and taking over our baseball line under the Tucci brand? And so we ended up coming to an agreement at the end of 2018.
Was your answer like, yeah, of course? No,
no, I know. My answer at first originally was like, I was like, no, I'm going to do this on my own, So I wasn't even really entertaining it at that time. But the more he talked, it made sense, and kind of I felt like our companies kind of fit like this piece of the puzzle. We brought what they didn't have, which was credibility in that space, and they brought what I didn't have. I didn't have a sales force, and we had, we have taken on some investment money, but we didn't have distribution levels, and, capital, structure wasn't where it needed to be in order to grow at the pace we wanted to grow. And so they brought a lot of stuff to the table that we needed. We brought stuff to the table they needed. And so it kind of made this kind of perfect marriage, so to speak. And shortly after COVID hit, and we've had issues with that. So that kind of delayed things, but all in all, we're kind of where we are now is where I anticipated being maybe a few years ago, but we're here now. So I'm grateful for that and excited for it.
A good thing you kept the Tucci name, all right?
So we had we had a little logo issue a few years ago on, that was, I didn't get to do everything.
Well, I mean, you were talking about the size of the label on the pad and things like that. I mean, you're right. It's like you don't think about those things until you're watching somebody on TV and you're like, yeah, I can't see the logo.
Yeah. So
it's interesting because I think having no context before we were started talking about getting ready for today. I don't know that I ever gave it thought. I feel like I've thought that there's just a room of bats that the team buys, and you kind of go in and you just grab what feels good and, kind of just keep mountain breaks. You go get another one. And, I think that getting familiar to understand how custom it is and how kind of player oriented it should be. Right. And it seemed like that was the biggest gap that you noticed, was that it really wasn't. And that, contributing to injury and, the customization of the swings and stuff that we were talking about earlier, it seems like that was something you realized, and that was what really you came back to change,
That's what I kind of noticed the market was missing as a player. Mm-hmm. And then when I came back, again, to your point, set out to change, but it was apparent that there was other companies doing this now, right? It wasn't, I wouldn't say I was the first one now kind of doing this. Like, the market had changed in my time kind of being, from being a player to now back in the clubhouse on that aspect. So my time as a player really didn't prepare me for that, other than the fact that it opened my eyes to what was needed in the market, at that level especially.
It seems like your instinct as a player, though, and your interest in the details and the performance and the specifications of what could make you better ultimately came together for this, though, because you have the player experience, what they're looking for, every element of the customization piece, and then when it came to rolling and ensuring that it was going to be hardened, right? All of those things did ultimately kind of come together, maybe subconsciously, right? But that's,
yeah, and even my time in the air conditioning and heating field, right? It really needed all of that to kind of end up to kind of make this product that from day one was accepted in Major League Baseball, like right out of the gate, right? Like I said, we hit the ground running in MLB like year one. So yeah, I think all of that needed to happen to even lead me to the realization that this was something I wanted to do.
That hyper awareness, right? I'm not a good baseball player, never have been, right? So, but the instinct and picking up on every subtlety, and as a batter, you're looking at cues and you're looking for, arm angle and rotation and, anything that you can pick up to get an advantage. And it seems like that's really what you converted very successfully, right? To understand how to really take advantage of the marketplace.
Yeah, I think, a lot of those kind of like attention to detail, like, and all that, right? To your point, like as a player, again, going back to the fact that I never want to leave any stone unturned. Like I'm going to do everything I possibly can to get to the big leagues. And now taking that same approach, like, all right, I'm going to do everything I can to make this successful. And what can I do different? What can I do better on a daily basis, right? How can I be better at what I do? And what stone am I leaving unturned? And I'm sure there's some now that I still yet to figure out that we're going to continue to try to get better at, especially now with the other products. Like, how can we get better at that stuff? But
you had sort of opened up and you talked about the feeling of failure. I think maybe we'd question that there's, any personal failure that you should be shouldered with, but obviously everyone handles that a bit differently. What will wipe that out? What's next? What do you want to accomplish?
Where I view like everything as a success. Because I'll be honest with you, I still don't view what I do as a success. I still view it as a work in progress. You know what I mean? And I don't know if I'll ever get over that, in all honesty. I don't know if I'll ever be able to say, you know what, my life turned out to this. I'm still always going to wish I played Major League Baseball. Like, that's just the reality I live in every day. Like, I watch guys on TV and, there's a lot of envy that goes on because, like, man, I wish I could have got there, and in my heart of hearts feel like I was good enough to get there. And I, kind of put myself in a position to get there. And, obviously injuries happen and things happen, but yeah, just, I don't know. I don't know if I'll ever get over it, but I just learned to live with it.
But you still get to go to the clubhouse, be in the dugout.
Still get to, exactly.
That's why he gave away the other jobs and maintained the one where he gets to be.
Sure, I'll probably be in clubhouses a lot longer now than I would ever have been had I just been a player, right? So, probably at this rate, I would have been out of clubhouses if I was lucky 10 years ago. So, still kicking around doing that. Right? So, yeah. So,
and you got to go to the College World Series.
That was exciting. Yeah. Going to Omaha, and like that'll be something we probably are going to be a part of like for years to come. That LSU team this year.
Oh
my God!
Right.
Stacked. I'll tell you, what really opens your eyes is just like how much the baseball world, just the sport itself, evolved. Don't really consider myself that small of a guy. I have a picture of Wake Forest came through our booth. I'm literally the smallest guy, and there's like 16 guys in the photo, and I'm the smallest one. I mean, these guys are all 6'4", 6'5". Like.
So you definitely would not still be in the clubhouse.
I would have went away a long time ago. Yeah.
Are there frontiers left in the bat space that you want to conquer?
Oh yeah, 100%. There's a new league that now popped up in in the Middle East. So I don't know if you guys saw anything on that. Like Kano just got drafted. I
just saw that.
Sandoval and Bartolo Colon
signed another contract. Yeah.
So so listen, there's opportunities there. There's still professional leagues like. We used to do some stuff with Korea. We're looking to get back into that market. Taiwan, we're in talks with a group out there to become like our reps and our dealers out in Taiwan. So, there's definitely untapped markets that we still have to explore. I mean, we're by no means at the top, and even just here in the U.S. I mean, we're always still looking to climb that next rung on the ladder.
We talked about how to end these kind of moving forward, and we hope that the conversation goes places where other interviews or other podcasts that you've done, go. So one, kind of putting us on the spot, did this bring up anything about the journey that you might not have realized before or thought about before?
Again, a lot talking about like the failures that I've, It's not typically something you talk about, like in a typical interview, you're talking about, oh, here's the new stuff we have coming out. Here's our website, but kind of just getting deeper into kind of like my mindset throughout the years and that kind of stuff. Just this whole, kind of platform and just like, the time, just the time we spent talking and that kind of stuff is different than almost any other interview I've ever done.
Well, I mean, we appreciate that. And I think what we want to ultimately do is try and not bottle it up, but learn from it, right? Because the continued picking your head up and driving forward, and that insight into what gave you that will to push on and try the next thing, and kind of call on experiences and say, I can work with this and I can repurpose this and I can evolve, right? And what kind of gives you or gives people the personal moment where they say, this is going to work, right? And others probably said, what are you making bats for, right? So that's what we want to get to. And, we'll definitely do the plug if you want to give the website and everything. Right.
TucciLimited.com if you want to check out all the new products and stuff we have. But I mean, to that point, it's, what keeps driving you forward. Listen, on life, I said, every day I wake up and, as much as I love listening to, Goggins and those guys, it's like, do I wake up with that attitude every day? No. There's some days I wake up and I'm like, what am I doing? Like, making all the wrong decisions, and there's self-doubt creeps in constantly, and and as much as you tell yourself like, I'm going to make this work, there's days you wake up and like, man, this might not work out, but show up every day anyway. You know what I mean? And like, I think probably more than anything I've taken away from like my career in like baseball, not only baseball but all sports, and even like what I try to instill in my kids today is like, there's days you don't want to do it. It's like, who are the guys who are going to show up on those days? Those are the guys that's going to get stuff done, right? Like, it's easy to get stuff done when you're excited. It's easy when it's new. And like I was first in, that first year in MLB baseball was easy. Like, when it becomes tedious, when when you're not talking to a major leaguer and you need to fly somewhere and go talk to a team of 10-year-olds, like, and that's what we're doing now, right? And you need to show up every day, whether you want to or not, and like that whole point of like not quitting and not kind of succumbing to that, for me is like, if I had to say there's one quality about me that has kind of helped me to get where I am, it's probably that, right? Like, come hell or high water, I'm going to be there. So I may not be right, I may make a mistake, but at the end of the day, I'll show up.
Is there something you do that you did when you were playing, when on those days you had a rough game, the night before, you got to get back in the mindset, or you wake up and you're not feeling it? Like, is there some ritual or some routine, right, that gets you in?
Sure there is. It's probably subconscious though. I'll be honest, it's not like I don't have this like morning routine that I like stick to, and
it's not like sock, shoe, or
or like, all right, I take a shower.
Like that one song or something, like, right, that gets you in the zone.
No, if I had to say anything, it's not like a morning routine. It's when I feel I need to take a second and just chill out by myself and just kind of like be alone with my thoughts, like I'll do that. And it a lot of times ends up being probably at the detriment of like my sleeping pattern, but a lot of times I find that being like 2, 3 in the morning. Well, if I had a routine, it's probably, I probably don't go to sleep until about 5 a.m. So, I just spent a lot of those out, I think like especially when you have to deal with people like on such a large part of your day, you do need that time to just be alone. And I almost feel like I sacrifice sleep time to just get enough time to collect my thoughts and kind of just be in that moment, as opposed to just like, I almost feel like in those moments I'd almost be losing out if I was sleeping through them, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? So
absolutely.
That's probably like the one thing I would say, like, which helps me to show up each day, is kind of getting that time to yourself again, even if it's at the detriment of my sleep.
So we'll just kind of close it. You had talked about the really fun times and great times and what you learned from your brother-in-law and some of the ways in which he was the operator and, had more of the traditional business background, where you're at now, is there anything you wished you could ask them about, how to think about next steps? And
I don't know about that. I think if I had to ask him anything, I would ask him if he's proud of what I've kind of started and kind of, even though I kind of let that business that we had kind of die down, but taking like his legacy and what he taught me and applying it to something else. It's kind of funny. About a month before he passed, we were in the attic fixing someone's air conditioning. And this, I'd already started that business, was doing it again, was at a point where I was just doing it like on the side. And he was joking around and saying, you know what, we've done it my way for long enough. He goes, let's just go into the bat business. He's like, I'll follow you for a while.
That was all the permission you needed.
So that was kind of cool. But yeah, it was kind of like his gift to me, was to kind of leave me, I think, with that kind of last impression that I think he would be. I think he would be proud. But just how much what he taught me in those years together led to the successes that I've had in this business.
Yeah,
his picture hangs in my when you walk in my office, his picture's still up. So we were real close. Like I said, he's my brother-in-law, but we were more like brothers than anything. But
he'd be proud.
He would. Pete, it's a great story. That's why I appreciate it. When we decided we were going to do this podcast, I was like, I know someone. And you're the first one I thought of, so I appreciate you doing this.
I appreciate it, man. This has been great.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, good luck with everything, guys.
Thank you.
Yeah, man.